Manifesto TV, we have here with us a consultant on water and sanitation and a former executive secretary on the coalition of NGOs on water and sanitation, Patrick Apoya. Welcome to this program. Patrick, what have you seen pertaining to sanitation for each of the political parties?
For the key political parties that have looked at their manifestos, at least everybody has dealt with sanitation. Unfortunately, its cousin, which is water, a lot of them have not dealt with water. But for sanitation, everybody has touched. Coming from the lower side, I should say CPP, PPP, and PNC. CPP and PPP did a bit of it in terms of very broad ideas on what they intend to do. Just said like the environment they put measures in place to ensure a good environment that will prevent diseases like malaria and things like that. So just broadly framed. PNC goes down to very minute things like we will put in litter bins, but very good issues like turning waste to resources, as captured in the national policy, has also been addressed a bit there. But theirs goes quite minute into the nitty-gritty of what a party should be looking at. It goes beyond strategic things. Mm-hmm. But coming to the two major parties, NDC and MPP, I think they have dealt with it quite broadly, mm-hmm. and I think they are also benefiting from incumbency advantage. Having been in power, dealt with the issues, they are quite articulate about what their vision is vis-a-vis what the national policies and strategies have been. So if you take NDC, for instance, it is very consistent with the National Environmental Sanitation Policy. It's quite consistent with the Millennium Acceleration Framework, which looks at key bottlenecks that can move us to the next step towards sanitation. So issues like implementing the Sanitation and Water for All initiative, which is a key document. Issues like establishing a National Sanitation Authority, which mm-hmm. is not really a policy issue, mm-hmm. but which has been in the system for discussion for some time, mm-hmm. has benefited from their manifesto. If you come to MPP, they have also dealt with strategic issues in terms of education, which is a key thing, capacity building, which is a key thing, sanitation task forces, which is a key thing, which most of them have dealt with. But unfortunately, half of it goes into talking about setting up pharmaceutical companies that will produce medicines. I don't know whether they are linking it to the fact that sanitation causes a lot of diseases, and therefore they will focus on manufacturing medicines that will treat those diseases, which I find a bit out of place. Besides that, MPP has been quite comprehensive. Mm-hmm. It's consistent with the national policies, and just like NDC, also very elaborate, consistent with national policies and strategies. Okay. That's what I should say for now.
But you mentioned that although sanitation has been broadly covered, water did not get as much attention. What were some of the things you expected to see in regards to water, on the water side?
On the water side, I expected all the parties to have a basic idea about what the current water situation is and where the key gaps are that they could focus on. These are not just about campaign promises. They are really the things that you are looking forward to help you fuel your economy. It's about the social aspects, but water also has commercial and industrial aspects, which is linked to economic productivity. Okay. That, besides the MPP again and the NDC, they were really very elaborate again, because NDC actually captured things on water resources, rural water, urban water. MPP did a bit much on urban water. But PPP, for instance, I don't think they even mentioned water. PNC didn't mention water at all. CPP didn't mention water at all. And I find that a bit unfortunate. Because even with sanitation, more than half of the sanitation solutions that we expect is water-based. Okay. All urban systems, there's no way you can promote a sanitation solution that is not water-based. And if you are thinking about sanitation and you're not looking at the water component, there's a gap. That's what I see.
Are you satisfied with the focus on sanitation generally by the politicians? If you listen to the campaigns, you watch the adverts, and you read the manifestos, is sanitation being given the requisite attention by the political parties in the lead up to this election?
I wouldn't say so, though it is not completely missing, and especially with the wake of the IEA debates, some specific questions on sanitation were asked, at least in the vice presidential debates, And for those questions, and even the presidential ones, a question on sanitation actually was asked. And besides them articulating their responses to those questions, voluntarily on their own, I haven't seen enough articulation of the issue of sanitation in the public. I've heard CPP actually mention sanitation as a crisis. I've heard MPP mention it. NDC has mentioned it. But it's not the kind of attention that somebody would expect. Especially knowing that Ghana is at the bottom of sanitation performance. Come to think about it, you have a target of up to 56% to cover towards the MDGs, which is just 2015. We are currently at 14% in terms of people who have access to improved sanitation. And your public health budget is dwindling by day. And you are really not really putting it into focus like the way somebody would expect. So I'm a bit disappointed, and people who are in the sanitation sector are a bit disappointed about the... Perhaps we have not... sanitation has not been as lucky as education, where Free Senior High School has sparked off a lot of engagement by various political parties trying to score some points with that. Maybe if somebody had packaged something also that could ignite the kind of that discourse that we have on education, it could have been better.
But some would say it's positive, because when you politicize education or NHIS, then you don't get to really address the issues, but you just focus on the headlines. It appears you are saying that the major political parties understand the sanitation challenge, and they seem to be not too different in how they want to approach it. So we could say that for an expert like you, this is a good thing. The politicians are not fighting over sanitation because they've all agreed that it shouldn't be something you politicize, and the problems are clear for everybody.
Yes, you should not politicize an issue, but no issue gets addressed unless it is political and it is an electoral issue.
Okay.
Even come to health, only those diseases that are political get attention. So if you take something like malaria, those that kill, CSM, malaria, TB, you just get something wrong in a district, you have a politician calling you. Something like mental health, those things that nobody ever calls any person, they don't get attention. So when we come to NHIS, for instance, it actually got attention because it became a political issue. So until people are referring you to a political promise, what you have said, there's no commitment, because the budget is small and everybody is struggling to fill in the promises that they are being called upon to fulfill. So if sanitation is aloof, they think that there's briefing space there, is the area that they easily sacrifice. And that's the bad part of it. You shouldn't politicize it, but the issue must be a political issue. It must be an electoral issue before it can get the attention. Take the same sanitation as I talk, for instance. When NDC was coming to power, they said they were going to increase the budget for sanitation because they know the problems. It's just that they're not getting the financing. And indeed, in 2009, the budget allocation to water and sanitation was the highest ever that you could think about. Budget allocation, highest ever. But when it came to releasing, by the end of the year, for water, for instance, only 18% of what was put on budget was released. As for sanitation, I can't even talk. The good thing about sanitation is because of, some of the Ministry of Finance got very involved, they understood some of the issues. It also became political because there were international bodies involved. So sanitation got a bit of, attention. But still far, far, far below the kind of investment that we require. We want it to be politicized because eventually financing or not financing will depend on how sensitive they think it is to the electorate.
Okay. Yeah. Let me finally ask you about private sector involvement and decentralization in helping us to address our sanitation problems. Yeah. Do you think that the parties focus enough on this? Or how do you think involving private sector and decentralizing even the management of sanitation, having implications for financing and all that, how important are these in helping us meet our sanitation goals?
For me, I think it's very important because the entire idea of sanitation is built based on the responsibility of the citizen. And the private sector drives on the citizen. Government's role are the bigger issues of setting the framework, the legislative, whether legislative or policy framework, and then doing the facilitation. So if you take the water-based sanitation, which is access to toilets, safe toilets, the law requires every house builder to provide a toilet for itself. It's just that people have flouted the rules. So private sector, the kind of strategies that Ghana too has outlined to be able to make a headway in sanitation are all private sector based, because we are talking about decentralized waste treatment. We are talking about turning waste to resources. That's the recycle, reuse, and whatever. All those are not things that government is expected to engage in. They are already engaging in. The private sector is already playing a role. The only problem we have in that decentralization is sometimes central government still controlling who should even be a player at that decentralized level, rather than allow the decentralized authorities to decide who should be a player, how they want to monitor, and how they want to set their goals. So, for instance, Zoom Lion, which is the biggest private sector player in solid waste management, is all contracted from Accra. And I have no problem about somebody's business, somebody's relationships, but having worked with the assemblies and going around, the most significant cry that you hear from them is that attitude of signing a contract for them. They haven't even seen the contract. They don't even know how much it is worth. They can't supervise. And yet, 1/3 of their common fund is subtracted from source. And if you have something like that and you call it decentralization, then it actually defeats. So again, how free we want decentralization to work is very important to solving the sanitation problem.
Thank you very much, Patrick Apoya, for talking to Manifesto Television.